Bjorn Ironside's Mediterranean voyage begins with a documented fleet, but his command emerges more clearly in later narrative than contemporary reporting. The route itself is extraordinary enough without importing every medieval adventure assigned to it. Around 859, Scandinavian ships left the Atlantic coast of Francia and turned south toward Iberia. Their expedition crossed political, climatic, and maritime worlds no northern crew could treat as empty space. Frankish and Arabic sources confirm attacks reaching the western Mediterranean, although they identify leaders unevenly. Later Norman history places Bjorn beside Hastein and converts the campaign into a commanding personal story. To test that story, the ships must be followed before the hero. Scandinavian forces had already spent years exploiting rivers and coastal bases within the Frankish kingdoms. The Seine offered raiding opportunities, winter quarters, tribute, and knowledge of Western European politics. A leader called Berno appears in Frankish annals during operations around the Seine in the 850s. Many historians have connected Berno with Bjorn, whose Old Norse name is Bjorn. The phonetic relationship and compatible chronology make that proposal reasonable rather than conclusive. Frankish writers do not call Berno Ironside or identify him as Ragnar's son. Those defining relationships belong chiefly to later Scandinavian and Norman traditions. In 1858, Berno reportedly swore submission to Charles the Bald, illustrating negotiation alongside violence. Such agreements could be temporary instruments for rulers and mobile warbands. Political accommodation on the Seine provides a possible background for departure, not a recorded personal motive. The expedition's crews may have sought wealth, bases, captives, and opportunities beyond heavily contested Frankish rivers. No surviving source preserves their planning counsel or assigns one purpose to every participant. Ships entering the Bay of Biscay faced long exposed coasts and unfamiliar harbors. Warcraft needed water, food, repairs, and places where crews could beach or shelter. Sails, rigging, iron fittings, and timber demanded continuing maintenance throughout a journey lasting several campaigning seasons. Navigation probably combined coastal knowledge, observation, experience, and information acquired through contact. No surviving logbook records their bearings, daily distances, or exact sequence of every landing. Christian Iberia and al-Andalus were defended societies with armies, fortified towns, fleets, and political intelligence. These were not passive shores waiting for Scandinavian discovery. Earlier raiders had attacked Iberia in 844 and met forceful Umayyad resistance near Seville. That experience likely formed part of the broader knowledge available by 859, though direct transmission is unrecorded. Arabic accounts describe another major fleet appearing along the coast during the reign of Emir Muhammad I. Numbers vary across sources and should not be mistaken for audited fleet registers. The raiders attacked in Galicia, where resistance reportedly inflicted losses and forced movement onward. They then operated against territories of al-Andalus, encountering coastal defenses strengthened after earlier attacks. Muslim forces captured or destroyed ships in engagements described by Arabic historians. Even a far-ranging expedition remained vulnerable to organized states that learned from previous raids. Some accounts place attacks near Algeciras and describe damage to a mosque. The campaign also reached the North African coast, demonstrating movement across rather than merely along the Strait of Gibraltar. Captives and plunder appear in the written record, reminders that mobility carried coercion and human displacement. Accounts of prisoners later exchanged show warfare, interacting with diplomacy and markets. From the strait, surviving ships entered a sea governed by dense commercial and political networks. Umayyad, North African, Frankish, Italian, and Byzantine interests overlapped without forming one unified defense. The fleet exploited fragmentation, but it could not command the Mediterranean as an uncontested northern power. The Annals of Saint-Bertin report Danish pirates sailing for a long time between Spain and Africa. That near-contemporary notice confirms remarkable range while leaving most individuals unnamed. Its authors viewed the campaign from Francia and summarized distant information, rather than observing every engagement. The Seine's annals placed the raiders in the Rhône region, where they attacked and established a base. They reached as far inland as Valence before withdrawing from resistance. This river movement connected maritime raiding with vulnerable routes toward prosperous interior settlements. Communities along the lower Rhône faced seizure, disrupted travel, and demands upon local defense. The raiders wintered in the Camargue, using wetlands and waterways near the river's mouth. A winter base required more than courage. Provisions, security, ship repair, and control of access mattered. Remaining through winter suggests an expedition organized for duration rather than one sudden coastal strike. It also exposed crews to unfamiliar disease environments, supply shortages, and counterattack. Frankish sources emphasize the devastation visible to their political world, not Scandinavian experience within camp. From southern Francia, parts of the fleet attacked Italian shores. Pisa was raided, according to near-contemporary Frankish reporting, establishing a securely named Tuscan target. Other Italian attacks are harder to synchronize because later narratives rearranged places and exploits. The most famous story concerns Luna, an ancient city in Liguria. In later telling, Hastin supposedly mistakes Luna for Rome and gains entry through a feigned death and Christian funeral. The stratagem culminates in sudden violence after the apparent corpse rises inside the city. This cinematic episode comes from much later narrative and lacks contemporary confirmation. Its mistaken Rome motif also turns geographic ignorance into a moralized trickster tale. Real Scandinavian navigators could misunderstand political geography without behaving like characters in a literary deception. Luna was a declining but still recognizable settlement, and archaeology documents its long history. Archaeological damage cannot automatically be attributed to Bjorn's fleet without a secure contextual link. The documented raid on Pisa should not be merged carelessly with every Italian legend. Likewise, later claims about Sicily, Greece, or Alexandria require source-by-source examination rather than route inflation. The strongest evidence supports movement through Iberian waters, North Africa, the Western Mediterranean, southern Francia, and parts of Italy. After extended campaigning, the fleet attempted to return through the Strait of Gibraltar. Arabic accounts describe another confrontation in which Muslim forces attacked the returning ships. Some Scandinavian vessels were reportedly burned or captured, reducing the force that escaped into the Atlantic. Survival depended upon passing a defended maritime bottleneck a second time. The return was therefore not a triumphant parade, but the conclusion of an expedition that suffered serious attrition. Sources suggest that only part of the original force reached Francia again. Precise totals differ, yet the pattern of loss appears consistently enough to reject invincibility. Those who returned carried goods, captives, information, and experience acquired across multiple political zones. They also returned without establishing a lasting Scandinavian Mediterranean kingdom. The voyage demonstrated operational reach, not permanent command. Bjorn's personal place within this route becomes clearest in Dudo of Saint-Quentin. Dudo wrote his history of the Normans around the early 11th century, well after the expedition. He names leaders including Alsting and Beer, usually connected with Hastin and Bjorn. His work sought to explain Norman origins for a ducal court shaped by Christian legitimacy. Earlier raiders become ancestors within a story, moving from pagan violence toward ordered Norman rule. Dudo's chronology, Geographies, speeches, and dramatic episodes require caution because literary design guides his history. His naming may preserve genuine leader traditions, yet independent evidence does not confirm every assigned deed. Later Scandinavian texts identify Bjorn Ironside as Ragnar's son and associate him with royal ancestry. Some traditions connect his descendants with Swedish dynastic claims. These genealogies reveal Bjorn's growing prestige, but cannot retroactively document Mediterranean command. The nickname Ironside likewise signals formidable reputation rather than a contemporary title preserved by the expedition's witnesses. One profile is the securely attested campaign by Scandinavian fleets between 859 and roughly 862. The other is Bjorn, plausibly related to the Frankish Berno and named as a leader by later Norman tradition. Material evidence confirms the ports and landscapes encountered, while texts provide the expedition's broad movement. Neither class currently supplies an inscription linking Bjorn directly with Pisa, Luna, or the Rhône base. Ship archaeology demonstrates what Scandinavian clinker-built vessels could accomplish, not which commander stood aboard this fleet. The campaign's largest achievement was connecting established Atlantic raiding systems with Mediterranean opportunities for several years. Its limits were equally historical: resistance, ship losses, logistics, winter exposure, and defended straits constrained expansion. For coastal residents, that experiment meant a tax captivity, damaged institutions, and pressure upon rulers to improve defenses. Bjorn's fame eventually absorbed this collective achievement because medieval history preferred memorable commanders to anonymous coordination. The route remains certain in its broadest outline, while the iron-sided hero standing at every turning point does not. His Mediterranean reputation rests on a plausible historical leader carried farther by Norman history and Scandinavian genealogy. The voyage was real, immense, and costly. Bjorn's exact command remains the unresolved passenger within its documented wake.